The stars looked different from the viewing deck of the alien ship. Commander Hanbin stood with his hands clasped behind his back, trying to appear calm. He was the first human to board the massive vessel of the Galactic Conclave, and he could feel the weight of Earth's future on his shoulders. "They are ready for you now," said his guide, a tall being with blue-tinted skin and 4 arms. The alien did not bother to hide the look of mild disgust on its face. Hanbin nodded and followed. His plain black uniform felt suddenly inadequate, compared to the shimmering materials the aliens wore. Earth had only achieved travel to Mars 30 years ago. These beings had crossed galaxies. The meeting chamber was circular with 12 seats arranged in a half-moon. Each seat held a different alien species. Some looked almost human, with 2 arms and 2 legs. Others were completely foreign. One appeared to be made of shifting-colored light. Another was a cloud of gas contained in a special suit. In the center of the room stood Grand Emissary Toral, the official spokesperson of the Conclave. Toral had gray skin with patterns that changed color based on emotion. Right now, those patterns were a dull yellow that Hanbin's translation device identified as mild interest with underlying superiority. "Welcome, human," Toral said. His voice came through the translator with a slight delay. "We have been watching your planet for some time." Hanbin bowed slightly. "On behalf of Earth, I thank you for this meeting." A sound like water bubbling came from one of the seated aliens. The translator converted it. "It still uses verbal communication. How quaint." Hanbin pretended not to hear. He had been chosen for this mission, not just for his scientific knowledge, but for his exceptional calm under pressure. The Korean Space Command had specifically selected him because psychological tests showed he could handle insults without reacting. "We are the Galactic Conclave," Toral continued, walking in a slow circle around Hanbin. "The 12 most advanced civilizations in this sector of the universe. We have existed for over 8,000 of your Earth years." "That is impressive," Hanbin said honestly. "Your species has potential," said another alien, this one with a head that reminded Hanbin of an octopus. "Though it will be centuries before you might be considered for even observer status in our conclave." Hanbin smiled politely. "We appreciate your assessment and look forward to learning from your advanced civilizations." Toral made a gesture, and a 3-dimensional image appeared in the center of the room. It showed Earth, rotating slowly. "Your planet has resources we find interesting," Toral said. "And your species shows unusual cognitive patterns. This is why we have decided to make contact now rather than waiting for you to develop further." One of the seated aliens, covered in what looked like golden feathers, leaned forward. "Tell us, human, what is your greatest achievement? What do you believe makes your species worthy of our attention?" Hanbin thought carefully before answering. He knew that whatever he said would be judged harshly. "Perhaps our greatest achievement is our diversity of thought," he said finally. "Humans approach problems from many different angles. We value both logic and intuition, both science and art." The feathered alien made a sound that the translator didn't catch. Another alien, this one with skin like polished stone, spoke instead. "Primitive thinking. True advancement comes through perfect logic and technological mastery." Hanbin noticed that not all the aliens seemed to agree. A small being with large dark eyes watched him with what seemed like genuine curiosity. Toral raised a hand for silence. "We did not come here to debate philosophy with the human. We came to evaluate." A new image appeared, replacing Earth. This one showed a strange structure floating in space. It looked like a massive monument made of unknown material, covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change even as Hanbin watched. "Do you recognize this?" Toral asked. "No," Hanbin admitted. "Should I?" "This is the Celestial Enigma," Toral said. "Discovered by our explorers 300 years ago. It predates even our oldest civilizations. We believe it was created by those we call the architects, the first intelligent beings in our universe." Hanbin studied the image with growing interest. "And what is its purpose?" "That," said Toral, "is what we have been trying to determine for centuries. The symbols are unlike any language we have encountered. They seem to change depending on who is viewing them and from what angle. For the first time, Hanbin heard something like frustration in the alien's voice. Our greatest minds have studied it, our most advanced computers have analyzed it, yet its purpose remains unknown. The stone-skinned alien spoke again. Some believe it contains knowledge of the universe's creation. Others think it might be a weapon or a tool of immense power. Hanbin couldn't help himself. And you're telling me this because... Toral's color patterns shifted to a deep blue. Because we are bringing representatives from various worlds to view the enigma directly. Fresh perspectives, even from less advanced species. Hanbin understood then. The Conclave, for all their advanced technology and supposed superiority, was stuck. They needed help, but were too proud to ask for it directly. I would be honored to view this celestial enigma, Hanbin said carefully, though I'm not sure what insights a primitive human could offer. The small, dark-eyed alien finally spoke. Its voice was surprisingly musical. Sometimes, Commander Hanbin, those who know the least about how something should work are the ones who discover how it actually works. Toral seemed displeased by this comment. You will not be going alone. We have approved one other human to join the research team, Professor Ki-ho of your Korean Advanced Sciences Division. Hanbin's eyebrows rose in surprise. Ki-ho is here? If on cue, a side door opened and a woman in her 50s entered. Professor Ki-ho was small in stature but had a presence that filled the room. Her short gray hair framed a face lined with age and wisdom. She smiled when she saw Hanbin. Commander, she greeted him. It seems we're going on a field trip. Some of the tension left Hanbin's shoulders. Ki-ho had been his mentor years ago, before he joined the Space Command. If anyone from Earth could help understand an alien puzzle, it would be her. Toral looked between the two humans with an expression Hanbin couldn't read. You leave tomorrow, the alien said. I suggest you prepare yourselves. The celestial enigma has driven some observers to madness. As Hanbin and Ki-ho were escorted out of the chamber, Hanbin heard the bubbling alien speak again. Such primitive creatures. Do we really expect them to see what we cannot? The dark-eyed alien responded quietly, but Hanbin's translator caught the words. That, my friend, is exactly why they might succeed where we have failed. The journey to the celestial enigma took 3 days in the alien ship. Hanbin spent most of that time studying the limited information the Conclave had provided about the mysterious structure. Ki-ho did the same, though she often paused to gaze out at the stars rushing past. I never thought I would travel faster than light, she said on the 3rd day. My grandfather would have wept to see this. Hanbin nodded. It makes our own ship seem like toys. They were sitting in a small room assigned to the humans. The furniture was not designed for human bodies, making it uncomfortable to sit for long periods. Have you noticed something strange about the Conclave? Ki-ho asked quietly, though they had been told the room was not monitored. Many strange things, Hanbin replied with a small smile. Can you be more specific? They are advanced beyond our imagination in technology, Ki-ho said. But they seem stuck in their thinking, rigid. Hanbin had noticed this too. Like they follow only one path of development, all science, no art. Ki-ho tapped her finger against the data tablet they had been given. Exactly. And look at the way they describe the enigma in these reports. Always the same approaches, repeated with more complex technology, but never changing direction. Their conversation was interrupted by the entrance of Mors, a tall alien with a hard outer shell like a beetle. Mors was the head scientist of the research team and made no effort to hide his dislike of humans. We are approaching the site, Mors said. Prepare yourselves. The first view of the enigma can be overwhelming for primitive nervous systems. Hanbin and Ki-ho followed Mors to the ship's observation deck. Other members of the research team were already there. There were 12 in total, 1 from each conclave species. Some nodded politely. To the humans, others ignored them completely. The ship slowed, and the streaking stars outside returned to their normal appearance as pinpoints of light. Ahead of them, floating in the empty space between galaxies, was the celestial enigma. Hanbin felt his breath catch. No image could have prepared him for the real thing. It was enormous, at least the size of a small moon, but its shape was impossible to define. It seemed to bend in ways that hurt his eyes to follow, as if parts of it existed in dimensions he could not perceive. Remarkable, Kehoe whispered beside him. The surface of the enigma was covered in symbols that glowed with a soft, blue light. As Hanbin watched, the symbols seemed to shift and change. He blinked and looked again, and they were different. The symbols are not actually changing, said a soft voice beside him. It was Lumi, one of the few conclave members who had been friendly to the humans. Lumi's body was made of something like crystal that glowed from within. It is your perception that changes as you observe it from different angles or states of mind. How long have you been studying it? Kehoe asked. I personally have been part of the research team for 80 of your Earth years, Lumi replied. The conclave as a whole has been studying it for 700 years. Hanbin turned to look at Lumi in surprise. 700 years with no progress? Moores made a clicking sound that the translator didn't catch, but his tone when he spoke made his irritation clear. We have made progress. We understand what it is not. It is not a weapon, it is not a ship, it is not a simple message. We believe it to be a test, said another alien, this one a floating green gas contained in a mechanical suit. The architects were said to share knowledge only with those they deemed worthy. The ship moved closer to the enigma, finally coming to rest about 1 kilometer away. From this distance, Hanbin could see that the surface wasn't solid as he had first thought. There were gaps and holes, places where the structure seemed to fold in on itself. We will take a shuttle to the surface, Moores announced. The humans will join the first exploration group. 20 minutes later, Hanbin found himself in a small shuttle with Kehoe, Moores, Lumi, and 2 other aliens. As they approached the enigma, Hanbin felt a strange sensation, like a gentle pressure on his mind. You feel it, don't you? Lumi asked, noticing his expression. The enigma has a measurable effect on brain waves. It grows stronger the closer you get. The shuttle landed on what appeared to be a flat platform extending from the main structure. When the door opened, Hanbin expected to need a spacesuit, but Moores explained that the enigma somehow generated its own atmosphere and gravity. Stepping onto the surface, Hanbin felt a vibration through the soles of his boots. The material under his feet was neither metal nor stone, but something in between. It felt warm, almost alive. This way, Moores said, leading them toward a large opening in the structure. This is the main entrance we've been using for our research. Inside, the enigma was even more confusing to the eye. Corridors twisted in impossible angles. Rooms seemed bigger on the inside than they should be, and everywhere were the symbols. Glowing and shifting as they walked past, they reached a large central chamber that the conclave had turned into their research base. Equipment of various kinds lined the walls, and several aliens were already at work, taking measurements and studying the symbols. 700 years, Kehoe repeated quietly to Hanbin, and they still don't understand it. Vex, the gaseous alien, floated over to them. We have tried every approach. Mathematical analysis, energy pattern recognition. We have attempted to match the symbols to every known language in the universe. What about non-language approaches? Hanbin asked. Could the symbols be art or music or something else entirely? Several of the aliens stopped their work to stare at him. Art? Moore said the word as if it tasted bad. This is clearly a technological achievement of the highest order. The architects were beings of supreme intelligence and logic. On Earth, Kehoe said carefully, some of our most intelligent humans create art. The two are not exclusive. Moores made that clicking sound again and turned away, clearly dismissing their ideas. Lumi, however, seemed interested. What would you suggest, Commander? Hanbin looked around the chamber, at all the advanced equipment, at the aliens who had been working on this puzzle for centuries. I would like to simply observe for a while, he said. To walk around the structure, to spend time with it without trying to immediately solve it. Vex's mechanical suit made a sound like a snort. The primitive wishes to take a stroll while we conduct serious research. but Lumi nodded. I will accompany you if you wish. There are areas of the structure we have not fully explored. Perhaps fresh eyes will see what we have missed. As Hanbin and Kehoe followed Lumi out of the central chamber, Hanbin heard Moores mutter to another researcher, "A waste of our time. The primitives will understand nothing." But as they walked deeper into the twisting corridors of the Enigma, Hanbin began to feel something. A pattern, perhaps. Not in the symbols themselves, but in the spaces between them, in the way the structure curved and folded. "Kehoe," he said quietly, "I think we need to stop looking at what's there. We need to start looking at what isn't there." And, for the first time since they had arrived at the celestial Enigma, Hanbin felt a spark of hope that they might succeed where 700 years of advanced alien research had failed. 5 days had passed since their arrival at the celestial Enigma. Hanbin had spent most of that time walking through the structure, observing from different angles, touching the strange material with his bare hands. The conclave scientists continued, their measurements and analyses, occasionally giving him disapproving looks as he wandered around without equipment. On the morning of the 5th day, Hanbin approached Moores in the central chamber. "I need something," he said. Moores looked up from a holographic display. "What could you possibly need that we have not provided?" "Clay," Hanbin replied. "Or something like it. A material I can shape with my hands." Moores made that clicking sound that Hanbin now recognized as laughter. "The primitive wants to play with mud while we conduct scientific research." Kehoe, who had been working with Lumi on analyzing energy patterns, came over to join them. "What are you thinking, Hanbin?" "I need to test something," Hanbin said. "A theory." Vex floated closer, his green gas swirling inside his mechanical suit. "And what theory might that be?" "Please enlighten us with your primitive wisdom." Hanbin had grown used to the insults. He simply waited, looking at Moores. Lumi stepped forward. "I can provide something similar to what you ask for. We use a synthetic compound for creating flexible seals in our equipment. It behaves somewhat like your earth clay." An hour later, Hanbin sat cross-legged on the floor of a quiet corner of the Enigma, working with the blue-gray material Lumi had given him. It was perfect for his needs, easy to shape but held its form once positioned. Kehoe watched as he rolled the material into small balls, then flattened some into discs and shaped others into curved forms. "What are you making?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet," Hanbin admitted. "But there's a pattern here that I can't quite see. I'm trying to feel it instead." Kehoe nodded. She had known Hanbin long enough to understand his methods. "You always did. Learn better with your hands than with your eyes." By the end of the day, Hanbin had created dozens of small shapes. He began placing them at specific points around one section of the Enigma's wall, stepping back occasionally to study the effect. Word had spread among the conclave scientists about the human's strange activity. Several came to watch, including Moores and Vex. Their comments grew increasingly mocking. "Perhaps it is creating a shrine to worship the Enigma," Vex suggested. "More likely it is simply reverting to primitive instincts when faced with technology it cannot comprehend," Moores replied. Lumi, however, watched with genuine curiosity. "What are you trying to achieve, Commander Hanbin?" Hanbin placed another small shape, a curved piece that resembled half a moon, near a cluster of glowing symbols. "The symbols change depending on who's looking at them and from what angle," he said. "That suggests they aren't just static information. They're interactive." "We established that fact 200 years ago," Moores said dismissively. Hanbin continued as if he hadn't heard the interruption. "But what if the symbols themselves aren't the message? What if they're just the frame around the real message?" Vex's gas swirled faster, a sign of agitation. "Explain yourself, human." Hanbin stood up, brushing dust from his pants. "In human art, sometimes the empty space is as important as what's drawn. We call it negative space." He pointed to the wall of symbols. "These patterns create shadows, especially when viewed from certain angles. I've been watching how the shadows move as the light changes." Kehoe's eyes widened as she began to understand. The shadows form a secondary pattern. Exactly, Hanbin said. But it's incomplete. That's why I'm adding these shapes, to complete the shadow pattern. Moores studied the wall, then looked at Hanbin's clay figures. This is absurd. The architects would not create a message system based on shadows. Why not? Hanbin asked. Shadows are universal. Every culture that has light understands shadows. For the next 2 days, Hanbin continued placing his figures, ignoring the growing audience of skeptical conclave scientists. Kehoe helped him, catching on to his method and creating her own shapes to fill gaps he had missed. By the 7th day, Hanbin had placed figures around the entire chamber, creating a complex arrangement that seemed random to most observers. But when viewed from the center of the room, the shadows created by the figures merged with those cast by the Enigma's own structure. Hanbin stood in that center spot as the others watched. It's not about the symbols, he said. It's about the spaces between them. The architects weren't communicating through what they created, but through what they deliberately left out. Impossible, Moores said, but with less certainty than before. The riddle is in the negative space, Hanbin continued. In the shadows. In what isn't there rather than what is. As he spoke, something strange began to happen. The light in the chamber shifted, growing brighter in some areas and dimmer in others. The shadows cast by Hanbin's clay figures seemed to deepen and connect with the shadows of the Enigma itself. What is happening? Vex demanded, his mechanical suit backing away slightly. Lumi moved closer, her crystalline body glowing with excitement. The energy patterns are changing, the structure is responding. The shadows continued to merge and connect, forming a new pattern across the floor and walls of the chamber, a complex spiraling design that had been invisible until now. How did you know? Kehoe asked Hanbin quietly. I didn't, he admitted. Not for certain, but I kept noticing that the most important parts of the structure seemed to be the gaps, the holes, the spaces where nothing was. It reminded me of an old Korean proverb my grandmother used to say. Which one? The usefulness of the water jar lies in the emptiness where water can be put, not in the clay that forms it, Hanbin quoted. The shadow pattern was now complete, covering every surface of the chamber in intricate flowing lines. The glowing symbols on the walls began to pulse in rhythm with the shadows. Moores and the other conclave scientists watched in stunned silence as the pattern continued to grow in complexity. 700 years, Lumi whispered. 700 years of the brightest minds in the galaxy, and we never thought to look at the shadows. A low humming filled the chamber, growing in volume. The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate. What have you done, human? Moores asked, his earlier mockery replaced by something close to awe. Hanbin looked around at the swirling shadows and pulsing lights. I think I just solved the first part of the puzzle. The humming suddenly stopped. The shadows froze in place, and then slowly, a section of the wall that had appeared solid began to open, revealing a passageway that none of the conclave's scans had detected. A hidden chamber, Kehoe breathed. Hanbin picked up one of his clay figures, a simple sphere, and rolled it between his fingers. Sometimes, he said to the astonished aliens, you have to stop analyzing and start creating to find the answer. The newly revealed passageway glowed with soft light, inviting them forward into the true heart of the celestial enigma. Shall we? Hanbin asked, gesturing toward the opening. And for the first time since they had arrived, not a single alien voice spoke in mockery or doubt. The hidden passageway led the group deeper into the celestial enigma. Hanbin walked at the front with Kehoe beside him. The conclave scientists followed, their earlier mockery replaced by cautious respect. How far does this go? Kehoe whispered. The passage seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, curving gently downward. I am detecting a large open space approximately 100 meters ahead, said Vex, whose mechanical suit contained various scanning devices. The walls of the passage were smooth, without any of the shifting symbols that covered the outer parts of the enigma. Instead, they glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from within the material itself. After several minutes of walking, the passage widened into a large circular chamber. Unlike the rest of the structure, this room was perfectly symmetrical. At its center stood what appeared to be a pedestal, though it was unlike any pedestal Hanbin had seen before. It seemed to be made of the same material as the rest of the enigma, but it flowed and shifted like liquid while still maintaining its basic shape. "Remarkable," Moores said, all traces of his earlier disdain gone. "This chamber does not appear in any of our scans of the structure." "It was hidden," Lumi said, waiting for someone to solve the riddle. The group spread out around the chamber, examining the walls and floor. Hanbin approached the central pedestal cautiously. As he drew near, the flowing material began to move more rapidly, swirling and reshaping itself. "Be careful," Kehoe called. Hanbin stopped a few meters away from the pedestal. "I don't think it's dangerous. It's responding to presence, not threatening it." He took another step forward. The material of the pedestal rose up, forming a column that reached his height. Then it began to change shape again, flattening and widening at the top until it resembled a simple table. "What is happening?" asked one of the conclave scientists. "I think," Hanbin said slowly, "it's inviting us to do something." The surface of the table-like structure rippled, then stilled. It now appeared perfectly flat and smooth, like a mirror made of the strange flowing material. Hanbin raised his hand and held it over the surface, not quite touching. The material rippled again in response. "It reacts to proximity," he observed. Carefully, he lowered his hand until his palm rested on the surface. The sensation was strange, neither warm nor cold, neither solid nor liquid, but something in between. The moment his skin made contact, the entire chamber transformed. The walls, floor, and ceiling seemed to disappear, replaced by a vast field of stars. It was as if they were suddenly floating in open space, though Hanbin could still feel solid ground beneath his feet. "Amazing," Kehoe breathed, looking around in wonder. The stars began to move, swirling around them in patterns that somehow felt meaningful. Hanbin kept his hand on the pedestal, sensing that breaking contact would end the display. A voice spoke, or perhaps not a voice in the usual sense. It was more like a thought that appeared directly in their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. "The patterns between patterns. The space between thoughts. You have understood." Several of the conclave scientists cried out in surprise. Two of them, including Moores, collapsed to the floor as if overwhelmed. "Who are you?" Hanbin asked aloud. "We are those who came before. Those who seeded the stars with the potential for life. Those who watch and wait." Kehoe moved to stand beside Hanbin, her eyes wide with awe. "The architects. That is one name we have been given. We have had many." The starfield around them changed, showing images of what appeared to be galaxies forming, stars being born, planets cooling from balls of fire to worlds covered in oceans and land. "You are showing us the creation of the universe," Hanbin said. "We are showing you how to see it. The knowledge has always been there, written in the spaces between stars, in the silence between sounds, in the darkness between light." The images continued, showing the evolution of life on countless worlds, the rise and fall of civilizations across the galaxies. Hanbin and Kehoe watched in amazement, trying to absorb the flood of information. The conclave scientists who were still conscious seemed to be struggling more, some holding their heads as if in pain. "Why?" Hanbin managed to ask. "Why test us this way?" The present seemed to consider the question. Those who see only what is obvious are blind to half of existence. Creation exists in both presence and absence. Your species understands this intuitively. Your art, your music, your stories all value the silence between notes, the negative space between objects. Kehoe grasped Hanbin's arm. "It's true. Our ancient philosophies speak of this. The empty space in a bowl being what makes it useful. The silence between notes being what makes music. The conclave races have advanced far in their understanding of the physical universe," the voice continued. "But they have lost the ability to perceive the spaces between. They see only what is, not what could be." One by one, the conclave scientists, who had remained standing, began to fall. Their neural systems apparently overloaded by the information transfer. Soon only Hanbin and Kiho remained conscious. "Why are we not affected like they are?" Kiho asked, gesturing to the fallen aliens. "Your minds are different," the voice explained. "More flexible, more accustomed to holding contradictory ideas simultaneously. Your species still values intuition alongside logic, art alongside science. This makes you better able to perceive the full spectrum of existence." The images around them slowed, focusing now on Earth and humanity's development. Hanbin saw cave paintings, ancient temples, modern cities, and finally, humans venturing into space. "You have much to learn," the voice said. "But you have something valuable to teach as well. The conclave has forgotten what you still remember. That true wisdom comes from balance." Hanbin looked at the fallen aliens around them. "Will they be all right?" "They will recover. We have shared only what their minds can handle safely. With you, we can share more." The starfield changed again, now showing complex patterns that Hanbin somehow understood represented the fundamental laws of the universe. Not just the physical laws that science had discovered, but deeper patterns that connected matter, energy, space, and time in ways he had never imagined. "This knowledge is our gift to you," the voice said. "Use it wisely. Share it carefully. Some minds are not ready to perceive the spaces between." Kiho, who had been silent for some time, finally spoke. "This will change everything. Our understanding of physics, of reality itself." "That is the purpose of the enigma," the voice replied, "to find those ready for new understanding, to help them take the next step." Slowly the starfield began to fade, the walls of the chamber becoming visible again. Hanbin felt the connection weakening. "Wait," he said quickly. "Will we be able to speak with you again?" "We are always present in the spaces between. Those who know how to look can always find us." As the voice faded, Hanbin felt a strange sensation, like knowledge being downloaded directly into his mind. It wasn't painful, but it was intense, filling his thoughts with concepts and ideas he had never considered before. The chamber returned to normal. The aliens on the floor began to stir, groaning and sitting up slowly. Mors looked around in confusion. "What happened? I remember seeing stars and then—" "You received the knowledge of the architects," Hanbin said, "or at least as much of it as your minds could handle." Kiho helped Lumi to her feet. "Are you all right?" The crystalline alien flickered with dim light. I understood, but now it's fading. Like a dream upon waking, Hanbin realized that the full knowledge shared by the architects had only truly been absorbed by the humans. The aliens had received something, but much less. Perhaps because their minds were too rigidly focused on what they expected to find. "We should return to the ship," Hanbin said. "We have much to discuss." As they made their way back through the passage, Mors moved to walk beside Hanbin. "How did you know?" the alien asked quietly. "How did you see what we could not?" Hanbin thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes," he said, "the most important things are those that aren't obvious, the spaces between what we can easily see." And for the first time, Mors listened without mockery. 6 months had passed since the discovery at the Celestial Enigma. Hanbin stood at the window of his quarters on the Conclave Central Station, looking out at the stars. So much had changed in such a short time. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Kiho, dressed in formal attire. "Are you ready?" she asked. "The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Hanbin nodded, adjusting the collar of his new uniform. It was black with silver trim, bearing the combined symbols of Earth and the Galactic Conclave. "I still can't believe this is happening," he said. 6 months ago, they called us primitives. Kiho smiled. "And now Earth is being granted full membership in the Conclave, the fastest admission in their history." They left Hanbin's quarters and walked together through the vast space station. Aliens of various species nodded respectfully as they passed. Some even bowed in the traditional Korean style, a gesture they had learned to honor the humans who had changed everything. "Have you finished reviewing the data from the research team?" Kiho asked as they walked. Hanbin nodded. The knowledge from the architects is immense. We've barely scratched the surface, but what we've learned already has revolutionized our understanding of physics. After their return from the Enigma, Hanbin and Kiho had discovered that the knowledge implanted in their minds was both vast and complex. It would take lifetimes to fully understand it all. But they had begun sharing what they could comprehend with both Earth scientists and the Conclave. The new propulsion system based on the architect's principles is being installed in the first Earth ships next month, Kiho said. We'll be able to travel between stars in days instead of years. They reached a large set of doors guarded by 2 tall aliens in ceremonial armor. The guards bowed and opened the doors, revealing the grand assembly chamber of the Conclave. The room was enormous, with seating for thousands. At its center was a circular platform where the 12 Conclave leaders sat in a ring. Today there was a 13th seat, a new addition for Earth's representative. Hanbin and Kiho made their way to a waiting area near the platform. Toral, the grand emissary who had first greeted them with such condescension, approached with a respectful bow. Commander Hanbin, Professor Kiho, we are honored by your presence today. The honor is ours, Hanbin replied formally. Toral's skin patterns shifted to a deep purple that the translator identified as sincere respect. You have changed us, Toral said quietly. Not just with the knowledge you helped us gain, but with your perspective. We had forgotten to look at the spaces between. Over the past 6 months, the Conclave species had been working to integrate the human way of thinking with their own. Some had taken to it more easily than others. The Luminari, with their crystalline bodies and perception of light, had embraced human arts and philosophy eagerly. The Sidari, with their hard shells and rigid thinking, had struggled more but were making progress. A melodic tone sounded throughout the chamber, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. Toral guided Hanbin and Kiho to seats near the platform. When your name is called, Commander, please approach the center, Toral instructed. The 12 will formally welcome Earth to the Conclave, and you will accept on behalf of your species. Hanbin had been chosen as Earth's first representative to the Conclave, a position of enormous responsibility. Kiho would lead the new joint research initiative, studying the knowledge from the architects and finding ways to apply it for the benefit of all species. The chamber grew quiet as the ceremony began. One by one, the leaders of the 12 Conclave species entered and took their seats on the platform. Each wore formal attire representing their world and culture. Mors, now the leader of the Sidari delegation, caught Hanbin's eye and nodded respectfully. Their relationship had evolved from contempt to genuine respect over the months since the Enigma. Mors had been one of the first to advocate for Earth's admission to the Conclave. When all 12 leaders were seated, Toral stepped onto the platform. We gathered today to witness a historic moment, Toral announced, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. For the first time in 5,000 years, a new species will join the Galactic Conclave. A murmur of excitement ran through the assembled crowd. Earth, the homeworld of humans, has demonstrated wisdom beyond their technological development. They have reminded us of a truth we had forgotten, that true advancement comes not just from what we can build or compute, but from how we perceive and understand the universe around us. Toral gestured to the center of the platform, where a holographic image of Earth appeared, slowly rotating. The humans solved the enigma that confounded our greatest minds for centuries. They showed us that sometimes we must look not at what is present, but at what is absent, not at the symbols, but at the spaces between them. Hanbin listened, still amazed by how completely the Conclave's attitude toward humans had changed. Their initial condescension had given way to genuine admiration and a desire to learn. Commander Hanbin of Earth, Toral called, please step forward to accept your world's place among the Conclave. Hanbin rose and walked to the center of the platform. The holographic Earth floated before him, beautiful and blue. We have existed for millennia, Toral said, addressing both Hanbin and the entire assembly, believing that advancement moved in a single direction, toward greater computation, greater technology, greater rational thought. We failed to see that true wisdom requires balance between the analytical and the intuitive, between seeing what is and imagining what is not. Toril presented Hanbin with a small crystal sphere, the symbol of conclave membership. Earth is now the 13th. Member of the Galactic Conclave, Toril announced, equal in all respects to the founding members. May the wisdom of humans help guide us all toward a greater understanding of the universe and our place within it. Hanbin accepted the sphere, feeling its weight in his palm. It glowed softly, responding to his touch. On behalf of Earth and all humans, Hanbin said, his voice steady despite his emotion, I accept this honor with gratitude and humility. We have much to learn from the Conclave's knowledge and experience. But we also bring our own gifts, our creativity, our intuition, our ability to see possibilities where others might see only emptiness. He looked around at the assembled representatives from across the galaxy. The architects showed us that the universe is made not just of matter and energy, but of the relationships between them. Not just of objects, but of the spaces those objects define. Together, combining your technological mastery with our intuitive understanding, there is no limit to what we might achieve. When the ceremony concluded, Hanbin and Kehoe made their way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from representatives of dozens of species. Eventually, they found a quiet moment alone in a small observation room overlooking the stars. What happens now? Kehoe asked, gazing out at the galaxy. Hanbin held up the crystal sphere, watching how it caught and refracted the light. Now we build bridges, he said. Between worlds, between species, between ways of thinking. The architects gave us knowledge, but it's up to us to use it wisely. Kehoe smiled and handed him a small package wrapped in simple paper. A gift, she explained, to commemorate today. Hanbin opened it carefully. Inside was a traditional Korean, celadon vessel, small enough to fit in his palm but crafted with exquisite detail. For someone who understands the value of empty space, Kehoe said. Hanbin held the delicate pottery up to the light of distant stars. The bowl's beauty lay not just in its glazed surface, but in the empty space it contained. The possibility it represented. In that moment, he understood that humanity's greatest strength had never been in what they possessed, but in what they perceived between possessions, the connections, the patterns, the possibilities that existed in the spaces between known things. The universe, it seemed, had been waiting for a species that could see not just with their eyes, but with their imagination. We have a lot of work to do, Hanbin said, carefully placing the bowl in his pocket. Kehoe nodded. We always have, but now we won't do it alone. Together, they looked out at the stars, seeing not just points of light, but the endless possibilities that existed in the darkness between them.